Transformative Principal, episode 97 with Amy Locke. We're going to continue my discussion with Amy Locke today, and it's really fascinating. We're going to talk about how English is a second language for students who are deaf and hard of hearing and what Amy does at her school to help support them. We're also going to talk about how sometimes she feels like an outsider, and it is a really great interview. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones, and please like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Transformative Principal. So I'd like to talk a little bit about things like classroom management and stuff like that. Obviously, you've got smaller class sizes, but what kind of issues do you see with discipline and classroom management and things like that?
Most of our discipline issues, this is going to sound pretty awful, come from our new students. They come in from a mainstream setting or even a self-contained setting, and they've had to stand up for themselves from bullying, for advocating this is what I need. So they come in pretty, I don't want to say aggressive. When I say aggressive, I don't mean like a physical aggression, but they are overly passionate about standing up for themselves and stop picking on me. And so they're trying to show that their personality is as strong as everybody else's. It's for me as an administrator, it's fun to watch them calm down once they realize we're all the same. We all have some level of hearing loss. We have all experienced the same experiences as far as, we're different from the hearing world. Even if I'm hard of hearing and I can communicate speaking, we're still different. And it's fun to watch them realize that and work through their identity and trying to identify who they are and how they fit. So that's the bulk of our classroom management, our discipline issues. There is a lot of chatting. In my department, they are teenagers. So, they're typical teenagers. There's the drama that happens. My boyfriend wouldn't hold my hand walking down the hallway type things. But with our class sizes, we can see everybody's conversation. So in a typical classroom, the students' desks are in rows or they're in clumps and little groups, depending on the teacher's decision. And in our classes, they are typically in a semicircle so that communication is barrier-free. No one is blocking any other person's conversation, so we can see what's going on. And that has helped a lot of the frustration with communication dissolve, really.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So classroom arrangement is one way that you help teachers improve their classroom management, making sure everybody can see and communicate with each other easily. What are some other things that you do to make sure that classroom management is effective?
Well, like I'm sending those 3 teachers next week to training. I want to empower them. I am here as a support. I am not here to usurp their roles as the authority figure in the classroom. So I want to empower my teachers to be the authority figure that they are. I do ask that when they send a child to my office that they tell me what for, so that I can be as supportive as I need to be, so that they can see that we are united. Communication has made a major impact on student behaviors in the classrooms and in the dorms. When we see that there is an issue between a boyfriend and girlfriend, I will call or email the student development office and tell them, hey, just let you know they're having an issue, because that impacts their nightlife. When they wake up moody, they will let us know. So it's all about the communication so that we know what's going on. As far as in individual classrooms, we've got everything going on from point systems to monetary systems to, empowerment of the students to help with the behaviors. More often than not, we don't have a lot of behavior issues. And like I said, it's typically the new students that are trying to find their path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What is the training that you're sending your 3 teachers to? What are they going to be learning?
They're going to be learning some various strategies that they can use. It's going to be like a positive reward, positive reinforcement training. So these are brand spanking new teachers, and so we're going to kind of empower them a little bit to let them know that the behaviors that they're seeing in their classes are not all bad, how to de-escalate situations, and just to give them the chance to learn about those strategies that, we learn through experience, but I want to kickstart it a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. As far as academics go, you obviously want your students to be just as successful academically as any other students. What are some of the things that make that more difficult, or do you feel like it's just the same as everybody else, same challenges and all that?
Well, I believe that we have a lot of the same challenges. I mean, we've got the parental involvement issue that does impact students no matter what their hearing ability is. And we follow the state course of study like every other school. Our biggest challenge has to do with language. For a lot of our students, their natural language is American Sign Language, and English is a second language and will always be a second language. For a lot of our students, they don't have the ability to hear the language. We, as hearing people, can accidentally learn grammar and vocabulary as we're growing up, through eavesdropping on mom and daddy's conversations, through the radio, through the TV, and we have to be explicit in teaching English with our students. And a lot of times they come to deaf ed classroom, whether it be here at a residential school or in a public school, they come with a lack of exposure to language in general. Or if a parent is learning sign language when their child is diagnosed as deaf, there comes a point where the child typically passes the ability of their parents. So they then become the teacher of the language. So that's a big issue, especially when it comes to English and reading. And that is a barrier to show what they know on standardized tests. So not only say we give the ACT or the state exam, they not only have to take the English and reading test, which tests their understanding of the English language, they are also having to take science and history. But in order to prove their knowledge of those subjects, they first have to wade through the waters of English. So if I ask them the question in American Sign Language, they can give me all the details. They know every date and every person in that history question. And if I were to give them the same question in written English, it's more of a struggle. So you're not only testing the subject area, you're testing their knowledge of the written language that is presented in. And a lot of times that is a very real struggle for their whole lives. Does not mean that they are any less smart, does not mean that they are any less capable. It just means that that's not their natural language, nor will it ever be. So there's a disconnect between what scores they receive and what ability they have. Well, most times they know more than what they're able to prove through standardized tests because they're not normed on deaf or hard of hearing students. They're normed on hearing students who don't have the same ability. And even if the hearing student becomes, an ESL student becomes proficient in English, they can still hear the language and pick it up and practice it. Our students, especially the profoundly deaf, it's in print only. And there are so many rules and so many irregularities with English and breaking the rules when this thing happens. It's hard to grasp when you can't hear it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, I know I did for a long time before I knew someone who had a deaf child, that sign language is basically just exactly like English and you can just transliterate everything right across. Like, you could say the door is over there would be the same essentially in Spanish or French or Italian or whatever. To be a pretty similar sentence, but that's not actually the case, is it?
Correct. It's not the case. As English and French and Italian and Spanish are their own language with their own syntax and semantics, ASL is its own language. It has a very distinct grammatical structure, and it's not necessarily easier. It is not English watered down. It is not English word order. It's just using sign language or signs to show English. It's not that. American Sign Language, British Sign Language, French Sign Language they are individually a language with their own rules that go along with it. And we as hearing people, we have English classes every year from kindergarten through graduation. And then if we choose to go on college, we still have to take English classes. There's no such standard for deaf and hard of hearing students. So their language is passed down kind of as an oral tradition would be, passed down from person to person. So it's fun. This year, I'm able to watch more closely. We do provide ASL classes to our students who are pursuing an advanced academic diploma option. And instead of being taught as ASL as a foreign language, they are approaching it as their L1, their first language, and dissecting it as we grew up doing with English. So they're learning the grammatical structure and the reason why they communicate the way they do. And it's fun to watch that transformation where they realize, oh wait, I am bilingual. I'm not different. I'm not less than because I can't hear, because my English is weak. I am learning to be bilingual. This is a real language. It's pretty awesome and pretty empowering for them as they go on and enter, life outside of high school.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about the kids who are new to the school and coming from a place where they had to advocate for themselves so much more. And I imagine that there would be this feeling of, oh, I'm not just bilingual, but this is a real language that is actually being taught like any other language. And there's a real reason why these things are how they are, not just that's what my mom taught me or that's what whatever teacher taught me.
Right.
I imagine that's very empowering for them to feel that and to know that, they're not just all alone. And I think I just think that's so cool.
They are. And it's fun to watch that transformation where they come in advocating and then they realize they don't have to because we understand. They don't have to fight for notes in class before the presentation. They don't have to fight to be able to copy the PowerPoint before the teacher talks. They don't have to beg for accommodations to allow them to wear their hearing aids on standardized tests. They don't have to ask for preferential seating because they all are in the preferred seat. It's fun, and it's fun to watch the parents as they realize that they don't have to fight so hard, that they don't have to educate us on what is needed for their child nearly as much. I mean, they're still the parents and they still wants what's best for them, but the IEP meetings are less combative. That's pretty awesome, and it makes us feel good that we are on the right track and are able to give the parents and the students a little respite from the fight they've had for however long they've been in school. I mean, there's still some things that happen. Of course, there's arguments or disagreements that happen, but those are few and far between. So I had an IEP meeting this year of a brand new student. He's joined my department, and his father spent the first 30 minutes of our IEP meeting educating us on deaf education. And when we got finished with developing the IEP, he said, I apologize for starting off like that. I didn't realize that you guys know what you're doing. And it's pretty inspiring for us to keep going when that realization hits them. It's pretty fantastic.
That is very cool. Do you ever feel that you are seen as an outsider because you're not hard of hearing? And
yes.
Okay, good. I kind of thought that might happen.
Yes, I am. I am definitely an outsider. When I was teaching, a lot of my students thought I was hard of hearing for a while, until very specifically remember when I was teaching 3rd and 4th grade in Houston, one of my students passed gas, and I turned around and he was in awe that 2 things: 1, that I could hear it, and 2, that it had a sound. So it's fun to watch that. But when I moved here to the residential school, I am definitely an outsider in that I'm hearing, but I'm choosing to step into this culture. So that gives me some level of acceptance as well. I understand their plight. I understand what's needed as far as advocacy is concerned. And I've been in this field long enough to know that if you try, if you give a valiant effort, if you show that effort, more often than not, the deaf community will accept you. So that's pretty awesome too, that, I'm in the deaf community through adoption, so to speak.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. The last question that I ask every time is, what is one thing that someone can do to be a transformative principal like you are?
I think to be transformative, you need to know your population. I think you need to not only know the population of your students and their needs, both as far as accommodations are concerned, but also their home life and where they're coming from, their perspectives. You need to know the population of teachers. As we try to individualize our education for our students, I need to individualize my professional development for my staff, and I have to make the accommodations necessary to make things accessible. But I also have to know the population of my parents and where they're coming from as well. So I know that most of my parents have had to fight for the rights of their child. I know that some of my parents are deaf themselves, so I've got to make sure that I communicate effectively with them and don't, leave them out, and understand their preferred method of communication. So I think in order to be transformative, you really just need to know your population and then work to meet their needs and empower them as well.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of the podcast today.
Well, thank you.
What a great interview. I feel so inspired after listening to that. And one of the things she said in episode 96 that I really want you to take to heart is that she learned how to be a good principal at her school by listening to what other principals are doing at their schools that are not like hers. I hope you'll take the time to listen to that and apply what you've learned here to your school. And really, I think what she said at the end, how to be a transformative principal, is to understand and know your population. That is so powerful. And when you do that, you really can make an impact. So take what you've learned from this and please apply it at your school, because she's got some great information here. I'd also like to remind you about a couple of weeks ago, I released an episode about the Picker app that my school developed, and I hope if you're doing any ad hoc grouping or doing any RTI Tier 2 interventions, this is a great way to organize that and make sure that you know where the kids are and provide them extra opportunities. I think it's really great, and it's based on the work of Mike Mattos and Austin Buffum, and it's just an amazing tool that'll help you create groups for Tier 2 interventions in a very easy way and be very streamlined. So I hope you enjoy it, and please go to pickr.org and take a look at what it can do. Totally free, won't ever cost you anything. It's open source, so you can even adjust it to fit what you need at your school. This is Transformative Principal, and you've been listening to, and my name is Jethro Jones. Thank you so much for listening. Transformative Principal is a proud member of the EduPodcast Network. You can see a lot of other great shows at edupodcastnetwork.com. If you're looking for a little pick-me-up, check out Always the Lessons Empowering Educators podcast, where Gretchen helps educators feel empowered and reignites their passion and potential.